One, adventure in faith, 5 gates to living now. And we often measure historical events based upon our ability to remember what we were doing just as they happened. JFK being shot, MLK, RFK, planes hitting the Twin Towers and the Pentagon on 9/11. And yet it's been a little different with this pandemic these last 18 months because there's so many bizarre moments to remember, right? And for me, I go to March 11th, 2020. That was the night that the NBA suspended its season in the middle of a game. And it was also the night that America's dad, Tom Hanks, got diagnosed with COVID, which caused us all to go, oh my God, if it could happen to Dad, it could happen to me. And so it really kind of began. I'll always remember that next day sitting in Dr. Michelle's office with Tom Litz, our music director, and Jennifer Burnett, our artistic director, and having to make that god-awful call, we can't have people in the sanctuary this Sunday. Isn't that terrible? And we had to reinvent the service, not only so that it could better express online, but so that we could speak to what was going on. We even received a great video from Martin Kerr, some of you may remember, that spoke to the pandemic and was so grateful to have that. And I remember thinking to myself, oh God, I just hope this only lasts a couple weeks. Right? And that's so much been the story in this pandemic. It's like The Godfather 3. Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in. And for me, there's another significant moment during the pandemic, but it's something that's individual for each one of us. For some of us, it may have been a gradual realization. And it was the realization that there would be no getting back to normal. That life and the world had changed. And when we got back to whatever the new normal would be, education would be different, shopping would be different, work would be different. And what I hope for each of us, no matter how tragic or isolating or lonely or infuriating the pandemic has been for you, I hope there was also a moment of a little bit of excitement, a little bit of anticipation that said, I'm leaving normal behind and I have the opportunity to co-create a new normal today. In this crisis, there is an opportunity to reprioritize my life, to sink more deeply into who I am and why I'm here, to make significant conscious changes. And that's what this Adventures in Faith this year is all about. It's about leaving normal behind, ceasing waiting for the new normal to be described and handed to us, and saying, I will and I am co-creating with a power greater than I am a new life and a new way of being today. And that's what these 5 gates are all about. They speak to exterior aspects of our lives, but they're really interior aspects. Resonance, relationship, relevance, realness, and rebirth. And I want to let you know just a few ways that you can participate in this year's adventure in faith. It's all about going deeper than the talks. You can go online to milehighchurch.org, and there's an AIF landing page. And the most important thing you can do is you can join a free small group, just 10 people or so. They're on campus here. You could actually, if you're here in the room, go to see Reverend Chris in the lobby, and she'll send you right to a group that starts at 11:30. But they're online as well for those watching at home or watching here, and they're all throughout the week. You just pick your date and time, and you just show up. If you can't make it this week, come next week. Also on that site, there are all the materials for the small groups that if you like to roll solo, you can do it yourself and read through the material. There's our daily pearls that you can sign up and keep looking on the services page and on that page. And every week, There'll be new opportunities for us to go deeper than just with the talks from Michelle and I. And I want to thank our committee, and I want to thank all of the practitioners who agreed to lead these small groups. Will you raise your hand if you're here? Thank you, or a committee member. Yeah, you're around here. Great. Let's hear it for them. And the first gate to living now that we're talking about today is resonance. Resonance. What does resonance mean? For me, it's when your inner life is in divine appointment with what's going on around you. It's when your inner life and your outer exterior life match up and when they're in sync. I love how the great theologian Howard Thurman put it. He said, life moves at a deeper level than the objective and the data of our senses. We are most alive when we are brought face to face with the response of the deepest thing in us to the deepest thing in life. Can you think about those times for you when the deepest part of you connected with the deepest part of life around you? That's resonance. And yet, like any sense of the soul, if we don't use it, it becomes dormant. And too many of us, especially in these pandemic times, have lost that sense of resonance because we feel that we're living in a world that's bonkers, right? And it doesn't resonate, and it causes us to withdraw, but we have to remind ourselves that we still live in God's world, that we still live in a sacred space. And that resonance is this aspect of inner life. You know, we forget sometimes that there's a difference between having dinner and experiencing dinner. There's a difference between saying that you love your spouse and that experience of loving your spouse. There's a difference between affirming the existence of the divine and the sacred out there somewhere and experiencing that divinity and that sacredness in your life. And when we touch that part of ourselves and begin to just open our minds, open our hearts, open our lives a little bit, we begin to feel our connection again. Yes, my life does belong to me. Yes, this world is a good place. Yes, I can move through the seeming madness that Martin was referring to and remember that just because the world seems to have gone crazy doesn't mean that I have to be. I had an experience during the pandemic, probably my craziest moment. It was a moment of stress. And it happened in February of this year, kind of the height of things going on. And I woke up that morning and my wife wasn't feeling well. So, sweetheart, you're staying in bed today, which means that I would take on the care of our 2-year-old who turned 3 last weekend. I can't believe it either. It means that I would be in charge of our son and getting him up for whatever they were calling school that week. And it meant, too, that I'd be working from home, thankfully, and we had some important meetings going on that day. And so we're a few hours into the day, and my daughter has me with butterfly wings chasing her around the house. I still haven't been able to get my son out of bed and awake. I'm trying to take care of my wife, and we're in one of those courageous conversations in a meeting where we don't all see eye to eye. And have you ever had the feeling, I call it breaking glass? It's that feeling, I can't think of a better term for it, where it feels like everything at any moment could just break. Have you ever had that feeling before? And I'm arguing with butterfly wings on, dancing around the house, and there's a Spotify app on the TV, and we're playing a mix I'd made my wife. And this song comes on by Tom Petty. It's called You and Me. Take a look at what I got. I can't promise you a lot, but you and me and the road ahead. And my daughter standing very still, and she's holding out her hands. And I can see it in her eyes, and maybe this sounds weird, but have you ever had that with a kid where you realize you're not just looking at the child, but their whole soul is there? Just the wholeness of her being is right there, and it wakes up the wholeness of my being in that very moment. Wherever that wind might blow, wherever that river rolls, you know I'll be there with you. Just you and me, and the road ahead. And she holds out her hands, and we start to dance. Just a slow dance. And I get my first slow daughter-daddy dance. And I began to weep. I almost want to weep right now. Not because of just that beautiful moment, but there was a realization of God's grace in that moment that I hadn't earned that. I had not earned that moment of grace because I was so caught up in the craziness of the day. And yet somehow, God brought me that experience. God gave me that gift to remind me, as crazy as the world may seem, I don't have to be. That as much as things may not seem okay, I can still be okay. And it's an amazing experience when God grabs you and tells you, I've got you. I've got you. I've got you. I've got you. It says it in the book of Isaiah, which I recommend breezing through while watching the Bronco game later today. I have chosen you and have not rejected you. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I have strengthened you and have also helped you. Yea, I will also uphold you. I'll just be open to the idea. There's that divine presence. And really, you don't have to do anything at all, but do your damnedest to be prepared. That little bit to open your mind, that little bit to break down all of that plaque around the heart, that emotional stuff. To open your life to that idea that you live in God's universe and that there are messages all around us. The sacred is around us all of the time, speaking to us if we'd only listen. It's not saying, hey, Ellen, it's me, God. How's it going? LOL. Yes. It doesn't speak to us like that. But it's in those moments of resonance. It's in those moments of opportunities for connection. It's in those moments where we either open up or it breaks us open to experience its depth, its grace, and its beauty. You know what the worst feeling is? This isn't a good opportunity for crowd interaction. It could get dark. You know what the worst feeling is? For me, it's not pain. It's not fear. It's not sorrow. It's not being able to feel at all. It's apathy. It's knowing that sun is rising and it's beautiful and gorgeous and not being able to recognize it. It's hearing your child's beautiful laughter, caught in an eternal moment of time and totally missing it. It's the recognition that you're alive and the people that you love, whether they're here with us or not in form, are with you too. And how wonderful, what a miracle to be alive, to be in this messy universe, or those making a mess of it, right? But not feeling it. And that's what's happened for so many of us in this pandemic. That's what I hear more than anything else. I feel disconnected from what's sacred to me. I no longer feel like myself, and I feel like life has to be laid out for me through someone's point of view than that it's my own. That is why resonance is so important, to build and nurture it in our lives so that we don't get caught up in just feeling possessed by the issues and challenges in the world. We get to possess the heart, the courage, and the clarity to walk through them and be transformational agents in them. One of my favorite spiritual teachers growing up when I was a teenager was Alan Watts. How many of us know who Alan Watts is? He's an Episcopal priest from England, would eventually live in a houseboat in San Francisco and would become the spiritual father of the counterculture movement. He got very into Eastern religions and would, pretty much translate it for hippies and for all of us. And there's a station in California called KPFK, and they would play Alan Watts in the middle of the night. I think they play him somewhere here in the mornings on Sundays. And he would always just talk really cool stuff. It was great to stay up to. And one of his most famous pieces he wrote about in a book called The Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are, which is a great title for a book. And he would talk about it in lectures too. And he classified people and the world the following way. He said there are basically two kinds of philosophy. One's called prickles, and the other's called goo. Prickly people are precise, rigorous, and logical. They like everything chopped up and clear. Where are my prickles? Gooey people like it vague. For example, in physics, prickly people believe that the ultimate constituents of matter are particles. Gooey people believe it's waves. And in philosophy, prickly people are logical positives and gooey people are idealists. And they're always arguing with each other. But what they don't realize is that neither one can take his position without the other person, because you wouldn't know you advocated prickles unless there was somebody else advocating goo. You wouldn't know what a prickle was unless you knew what a goo was, because life is not either prickles or goo, it's gooey prickles and prickly goo. All right, so where are my prickles? Where are my gooey people? Where are my gooey prickles? And where are my prickly goos? See, we can all connect in that. And I'm a student of pop culture, as you know, and these were very influential words. They were very influential to a guy named Art Clokey, who invented a character called Gumby, and his friend Pokey. He needed to add two friends to them, and you know what their names were? Prickles and Goo. In the more modern era, two college students made one of their first animated pieces to Alan Watts talking about prickles and goo. They are the new owners of Casa Bonita. Their names are Colorado's own Trey Parker and Matt Stone. And they made a little cartoon. You can see an image of it here. You can see the prickles. You can see the goo. And they created a important cartoon for my generation, which you can see the seeds of, right? Does that not look like Cartman from South Park there in the green? And you can YouTube that one later and check them out, and love and blessings to Matt and Trey. There's something else I love that Alan Watts said that speaks to our topic today. He said, the fundamental, ultimate mystery, the only thing you need to know to understand the deepest metaphysical secrets is this: that for every outside there is an inside, and for every inside there is an outside. And although they are different, they go together. And that's what the resonance I'm talking about means when I'm talking about it today. It's that ability to have the inner experience of what's going on around you, to move out from a place of dissonance, of feeling separated from everything, to slowly, meticulously, intentionally being available for connection and resonance in every moment. It's a creative power. It's a deepening experience. It's an authentic way of being that allows us to converse with what is sacred to us in all of life, in the mundane and in the extraordinary. Even Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas says that the way to enter the kingdom of heaven is to make the two one, to make the outer like the inner and the inner like the outer, because that's when we truly live our lives in wholeness, inner life and outer life together. Gandhi may have put it simpler. He said, happiness is when your thoughts, words, and actions are in harmony. That's what we're seeking for with resonance. And I want to share with you 3 commitments, not just for today's talk, but for this entire adventure in faith, these next 5 weeks together, that I'm going to make and try and keep, and I invite you to make them with me. And the first is I will consistently commit to living in God's universe. I will consistently remind myself that I live in God's universe. Take a moment each and every day when you can, have that prayerful consciousness. What is my grandest imagination of what my life can be, of who I am, of what my relationships are? Then pause and just open up. It may sound a little weird, and ask yourself, what is God's grandest imagination of what life is, of what my relationships mean, of who I am? Richard Bach said something similar. He said, imagine the universe as amazing and wonderful as you can, and remember, something has imagined it greater than even you can. And let's start downloading that. Let's start opening up to receive that resonance with the divine. The second commitment is I will cease tearing down and seek to only lift up. I'm going to stop tearing people down, and I'm going to start lifting up. The only thing I'm sicker of than people being mean is being mean myself. You know, they say if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, but it doesn't mean I'm not thinking it, right? And there is that discord, there is that anger about the miscommunication going on and the frustration with not being able to get it together better in some areas of society, even in my own life. But you know, I'm going to acknowledge it, and I'm going to be a presence that's seeking to lift people up, and I'm going to stop tearing down. You know, in some of our small groups or in the material you may download today, you'll see a handout, and it talks about what leads to dissonance and what leads to resonance. So I know that when I'm in victimhood or in blame, I'm in dissonance. When I'm holding everything to the past or my judgments, I'm in dissonance. Even when I'm living in my favorite illusion that I'm right, I'm in dissonance. When I'm overly pessimistic, I'm in dissonance. When I believe in an enemy, I'm in dissonance. When I'm in unhealthy communication, just holding it all back, unwilling to be vulnerable, I'm in dissonance. And if I want to get to resonance, I have to start taking acceptance and responsibility for my own life. I have to stay open to the present and stop holding everyone and everything to the past. I have to stay humble. I have to stay open at the top. Sound familiar? I want to be optimistic. I want to seek harmony with others. And I have to be willing to communicate courageously, authentically, to share what it is that I believe or what I'm experiencing, but also to try and do so in such a way that feels so authentic that the person talking with me can feel they can do the same thing. When I can do these things, I can move to that greater sense of resonance in my life, and it starts creating, it starts cultivating, it starts helping me to feel like my life belongs to me again and not to someone or something else. Lastly, I will leave normal behind and start doing the work to co-create my new normal with the divine. I will courageously and consciously leave normal behind and consciously co-create a new normal with the divine. See, that's the heart of our teaching. That prayer, power greater than you are, you can use it. That grace deep in your heart that reveals itself from time to time, it's the truth of who you are, and we can use it together. And just as a way of closing today, I want to bring in some wisdom from a great teacher. You may have heard of him. His name is Roger Teal. Spoke the last 2 Sundays. That's my analogy for Roger, is that he's like John Elway coming back to throw games for the Denver Broncos. So it's humbling for the other quarterbacks, but it's great for our spiritual community. And Roger's known as the king of acronyms. But what I admire most about Roger as a spiritual teacher is he has this ability to articulate incredible, heart-inspiring questions. He connects deep within, and he comes out with these questions that really open me up to think of the divine and possibilities in a greater way. And so I'm going to share 3 with you today from his book, This Life is Joy. And if you'd like, you can close your eyes or just be present or pull out something to write with and on. And his first question is, what in my experience no longer represents the truth of my spiritual nature or the mandates of my heart? What in my experience no longer represents the truth of my spiritual nature or the mandates of my heart? And he also asks, what is the spirit-inspired possibility for my life that a part of me is afraid to comprehend? What is that spirit-inspired possibility for my life that a part of me is afraid to comprehend? And lastly, what next step seeks to be conceived in my awareness and incubated in my heart? What next step seeks to be conceived in my awareness and incubated in my heart?